Hello, this is Robert Najemy, and I'm going to be presenting to you the 12 pathways to higher consciousness, a concept organized by Ken Kais in his book, The Handbook to Higher Consciousness, which you would definitely want to read. And you might want to know that Ken is paralyzed in his arms and legs and has written over 13 books and given hundreds of lectures around the world on happiness, explaining that happiness is an internal state and is not dependent on what we have or are able to do. In fact, in his case, he was able to do little without the use of his arms and legs, but helped so many people find happiness inside. And I have created a resume, a shorter, simplified version of these pathways in my own book, The Psychology of Happiness, which I sent to Ken Kais at that time. That's about 25 years ago, maybe even more, 30 years ago. And he was pleasantly surprised and agreed that this was a useful interpretation of his pathways. But it doesn't start with Ken Kais, and of course not with me, but with Patanjali, a yogi who lived 2,500 years ago, and wrote a very small book called the Patanjali'S Yoga Sutras, in which he explains the cause of human suffering, and thus the way for the human to seek suffering, to cease suffering. He starts out with the statement that we are spirit, but that when we incarnate, we lose the awareness of our spiritual nature. Not intellectually, we may intellectually believe we are spirit, but we lose the experience, and we suffer from a form of ignorance or amnesia. This inability to experience our own spiritual nature and our freedom from the body and mind, that we pre-exist and continue to exist after the body and mind, causes us to identify totally, exclusively with the body and mind. Now, we have a body and we have a mind, and we want to care for them and use them properly and love them, and by doing exercises and correct food and mental exercises, care for the body and the mind. But we are not that. It's like saying that we are our car. We love our car, we use it, we care for it, but we are not the car. Now, this identification with the body and the mind causes fear. We fear pain to the body or the mind, and we fear the death or the ceasing to exist as a body or as a separate mind. And so fear is created after identification. Now, based on this fear, we try to seek to find ways to feel secure, to feel our self-worth, to feel our happiness. And we do that by attaching ourselves to people, to substances, which hopefully will help us relax or have energy, to various objects and comforts in our lives. So the ignorance leads to identification, which leads to fear, which leads to attachment and aversion. Now, this attachment and aversion do not solve the problem because we're not able to control that external world on which we have become now dependent or addicted. And so we have anxiety about getting what we want, fear we may not be able to, injustice when we are not able to, maybe even guilt, jealousy towards those who have what we want, and even anger towards those who we believe are preventing us from getting what we believe we must have. And even when we have what we want, which we believe allows us to feel worthy or safe or free or fulfilled, we don't relax because we fear losing those things we're attached to. Now, our attachments can be correlated, and our motives can be correlated to the 7 centers of consciousness, also explained in ancient Indian philosophy, The first center is our first need is security, then pleasure, power, affirmation, love, abundance, I'll explain that later, the impartial witness, and then we experience ourselves as universal consciousness, that is, our spirit. Now let's look at each of these centers of energy separately. The first center at the base of the spine, the energy there causes us to seek security through people, experiences, objects, through wealth, food, situations, habits, erotic contact, money, social and work positions, and even helping other people. So it's not what we do which can determine from which energy center we are functioning. It has to do with our motive. So when our energy or our consciousness is focused in the lowest center, not lowest in the sense of evil, we need to be secure, but our motive is security. So when we approach people or even do things for people, we may be doing that in order to feel secure. Now, the second center is the pleasure center. Here we become addicted to people or activities or substances such as cigarettes or sugar or sweets or alcohol, or habits like gambling, or our computers, our tablets, our phones, our cars, our animals, our pets, sexual contact. These are all a source of pleasure for us, and pleasure causes us to live in the present. It relaxes us, and so we can become addicted to certain objects of pleasure. Now, there's nothing wrong with this. This is not evil. But when these addictions cause us to lose our health, or come in conflict with others, or create unhappiness when we cannot satisfy our pleasure addiction, then it becomes a problem. So the problem is not these things that can give us pleasure, it's our addiction to them. Now, the third center, which we could say is in the area of the solar plexus, we seek power and affirmation and create power and affirmation addictions, usually to people, but also to objects and money and professional positions, even sex, riches, and of course, relationships. So here, our motive is to verify our self-worth and to verify our power. Now, in relationships, that means that we feel verified when people obey us, when they agree with us, when they need us. Is we need them to need us in order to feel powerful or worthy or affirmed, or when they do something less well than we do. Now, in these first three centers, we may to say to someone, I love you, but what we're really saying is, I love you because the way you are or the way you behave allows me to feel security, pleasure, or affirmation. And the truth is that if you change the way you behave and don't behave in a way that gives me security, pleasure, or affirmation, not only do I stop loving you, but I may even feel negative feelings, anger, even hate towards you. And if you give these to someone else, even worse. So in the beginning, our love is also infiltrated with need. Okay? Now, when our needs, addictions, and attachments are not satisfied, we lose our feelings of security, peace, happiness, and love. Now, if these were not addictions but preferences, this would not happen. So this whole concept here is transforming addictions or attachments to preferences. We then resort to defensive behaviors and strategies and attempt to get what we are addicted to. Here we might consider the roles of the Celestine prophecy, that is, playing the victim or playing the aloof or the interrogator or the aggressive one, in a way that we try to force people to be as we need them to be in order to feel safe or even worthy. Now, this kind of energy from the first three centers causes us to create codependent relationships rather than relationships with pure love without need. So we are dependent on the other, and we want the other to be dependent on us. When these attachments are not satisfied, we feel fear and pain and injustice, and become angry when the others are not what we need them to be, or when we believe that they're obstructing us from satisfying our needs. So in general, we suffer when our energy is imprisoned in these first three centers. Now, when through a process of these 12 pathways, or through the process of any spiritual path, including meditation, breathing techniques, proper dietary habits, and the employment of spiritual perceptions, we free our energy to some degree from the first three centers. It rises up into the fourth center, the center of love. And for the first time, we begin to experience pure love, perhaps for only specific persons, even when they don't fulfill our needs, and maybe even when they obstruct us from filling our needs. Our love is becoming free. It's like the gold that we bring up from the earth, which has other metals in it, and we need to purify that in a fire. And in the fire, after the fire melts the gold and the other metals, we can then separate them. So what I believe is our relationships, especially to close loved ones, is like a fire which allows us to separate the gold, which is our love, from the other metals, which are our needs. So we never actually feel pain because we love. We only feel pain because we need. And when we're not getting what we need, then we feel pain. So we need to let go of the idea that love causes pain. Even if we lose the other one, we can still love them. So it's the need, the fact that our needs are not being satisfied. Even our need for them to be well is our need. And so needs cause pain, love does not. Now, when this energy continues to rise, it arises to the fifth center, which is called the center of abundance and happiness. Now, what happens here? This circle of identification in which we begin to identify not only with ourselves and not only with our family, but also with the people around us, regardless of their religion, their political beliefs, their nationalities, even their behavior, we begin to care for a greater circle of people. Our circle of identification becomes much larger to include people from all religions and races. And then we become inclined towards helping society. We may join a group of people that are doing some kind of selfless service to the people around them. Now, when we do this, we become instruments of the universe, instruments of harmony and abundance and health. And what happens is, and happiness. What happens is that the universe begins to support us. The universe uses us to create this harmony. And then all of our needs are taken care of. So what we do here, we're living a sense of abundance in which our needs for security and pleasure and affirmation and whatever we need is being given to us in a very mysterious and miraculous way from the universe. We are being supported. And it's a very beautiful experience. Now, when the energy continues rising, it rises to the sixth center, at the center of the forehead, the so-called third eye. We become witnesses with spiritual love. Now, we love people not only for their egos, but for the soul within. We're more interested in freeing the soul within the ego. And in this case, we would not be very interested in giving affirmation to everyone's ego or playing ego games so that people feel good. We're more interested in freeing them from the ego games. And many spiritual teachers are experiencing that level of consciousness, which they see the other person as an evolving spirit. And they may even at times behave in a way which causes pain to the ego in order to free the spiritual self within. This is not always necessary, of course, but we're seeing people as evolving beings. We're not seeing their race or their age or their academic abilities or their mind. We're more interested in their essence. Now, when the energy arises to the top of the head, it's difficult to talk about this because we are one with the world around us. We have now become identified with the universal consciousness, which is the consciousness in all other beings, including animals and insects and plants and mountains and seas. We have what is called by Abraham Maslow the peak experience, the loss of individuality and the experience of being one with all. Now, the pathways, the 12 pathways to higher consciousness. And these are my simplified version, which I already mentioned Ken Kai's has agreed with. I am freeing myself from addictions which cause me to suffer. Now, we see here this statue getting free from its state of being encased in the cement. How can this be done? By self-observation, by analysis, and discovering the beliefs which are preventing our freedom, by belief transformation, that is, discovering new ways to perceive ourselves, others, and life. We may need to do some work on our past memories, that is called healing the inner child, that is, those beliefs created in our childhood years. Energy psychology, such as EFT, BSFF, TAT, Sedona method, Ho'oponopono, these are all very valuable in getting us free, and of course, all spiritual truths. So this is a declaration of purpose. I want to get free. So getting free from the addictions which cause me to suffer and keep me from loving. Two of my books that explain the energy psychology processes of getting free are The Free to Be Happy and Dealing with Testing Times. All of these books are available on Amazon and on our site. So that here I'm presenting to you ways of getting free from these addictions by using energy psychology. Now there's a famous Greek author called Nikos Kazantzakis who on his grave is written the following, his own words from one of his books. I hope for nothing, and this word's hope should be interpreted as I'm addicted to nothing. I need nothing specific to happen. I'm not attached to something specific happening. I fear nothing. I am free. And we see here the prerequisites for happiness, that is, free from addictions and free from fear. Now the second pathway. I am discovering how my addictions are distorting my perception of people and situations around me. Now this can be done by self-observation, that is, observing the way we're thinking and keeping a daily diary every day, writing down what we observe in our thoughts, our emotions, our reactions. Questionnaires help also. And you'll find a number of questionnaires in my book, The Psychology of Happiness. And then group analysis, that is, people can reflect to us what we cannot see in ourselves. So we're often blind to our own beliefs that are causing us to suffer, and sometimes we need a group to help us see that. Basically, we perceive and even create reality through our beliefs. We see what we believe and we create what we believe. So here we can see supposedly the brain and an eye before that, looking to the left, through a series of belief filters caused by our nationality, religion, gender, race, our economic situation, our education, our appearance, our profession, and of course our childhood experiences. And these do not allow us to see what is there, but what we see is what we believe is there, especially what we have an emotional investment in. So our purpose here in the first pathway is to get free from these. There's to clean up all of these filters and see what is there. And in this case, what is the other person but an expression of the divine? So each of us is a light being, a divine being, enclosed in a certain body with a certain age, gender, even behavior. But what we want to do is to see beyond that the being that is there. Now, the second pathway, I am discovering how my addictions are distorting my perception of people and situations around me. Now, this is a self-knowledge process, and the questions are, when do I lose my peace, happiness, or love? These are the basic indications that I am in touch with myself. In which situations? Which of my needs is in danger? Now, in quotation marks, because we believe that our self-worth is in danger, or our security is in danger in those situations. Which beliefs cause me to feel that way? So what are the beliefs that are creating the needs which are causing me to lose my peace? And do I want to get free from these beliefs and needs? So this is a choice. I am choosing to discover, and I am choosing to get free. Now, pathway 3. I welcome life's lessons which make me aware of my addiction. So I am deciding to get free. I'm discovering which addictions are causing me to lose my love. And now I want to welcome life's lessons in doing that process. And you know the phrase, when life gives you lemons, make lemonade. So take something negative and make it into something positive. Now the areas in which we are learning many life lessons is the body, and it has to do with our health and appearance. It has to do with abundance, another level, our money and our profession, our work. Relationships is a huge part of our life lessons, and of course, the various unexpected events that happen in our lives. Now, what could we possibly learn through some experiences which are perhaps not the most pleasant? Not that we learn only through unpleasant experiences. I don't want this to be thought. It's just that when something is unpleasant, rather than becoming negative and hurt and feeling injustice and feeling angry or guilty, it's better to use that experience as a way to learn whatever we can learn. So I welcome life's lessons. So what could we learn through an illness? To improve our diet, to adopt healthier living habits, to analyze and correct any negative thought patterns. Now, if we did these first 3 things, we not only would have better health, but we would grow spiritually. That is, our consciousness would raise. So many times an illness just becomes a stimulus for us not just to get well, but to raise our consciousness, to learn to be more humble and compassionate, to learn to accept love and care from others, to think more deeply about the meaning of life, and perhaps change the way we live, to re-examine our goals and value system, to develop the mental powers of positive thought projection, and then use those for other aspects of our lives, to take a more active role in the creation of our health, happiness, and harmony, to have faith in the love and wisdom of the universe, that nothing will happen to us that is not in our highest possible good, to concentrate more on our contact with the divine, which is very healing, but also spiritually uplifting, and to realize that we are not this body, and to identify ourselves as souls. What can we learn from a separation? To examine our behavior and to see our contribution to whatever caused the separation. To learn to love the other in spite of his or her behavior. To discover that we can live without this person. It's another lesson. To develop greater inner strength, to become more self-sufficient. To change or improve our self-image, because our self-image may be part of the problem. If we're not loving ourselves, then we may be attracting unloving behavior. And to direct our energies in a spiritual direction. Now, what can we learn from the loss of a loved one? To accept that loss is a basic part of our life cycle. We're all going to leave the physical body. None of us are here forever. So loss is really the only sure thing in our lives. To learn that we can live and be happy again. This has been proven by so many millions of people because all of us have lost loved ones and we can continue to be happy if we choose to. We have free will and we can choose not to be happy. We can increase our faith in the wisdom and justice of the universe, that this is not by chance, it's not an accident, and it certainly is not a form of punishment. It is simply a choice, a sole choice on our part and the part of our loved one, that this is the best for our evolutionary process, for our loved one to leave, and they're basically in a much better place than we are, and for us to learn through this experience. To develop a stronger relationship with the divine, that can never cease to exist if we choose for it not to. To confront and study what death is actually, which is not death, it's just simply the freedom of the spirit from the temporary physical body. To re-examine and readjust our life values and goals, knowing that we're all going to leave these bodies. Is it really worth going after money or fame or not loving others who may obstruct us at certain times? So we may want to see what is it that is really important in life. At least my confronting the death of many loved ones has caused me to reevaluate what is important to do with my life. And of course to discriminate between the body, mind, and the soul. Only the body does. Now, what can we learn from the loss of something else? There's a loss of our wallet, of our watch, of our car. We can discover the value that it has for us. Sometimes we don't discover the value of something until we lose it. We can discover that in truth we really do not need that particular object as much as we had previously thought, that we can be happy without it. We can learn that these external objects do not bring lasting security or contentment or affirmation. We can learn how to enjoy them without becoming attached to them. And there's a story about the bird sitting on a branch, and the bird is enjoying the branch, resting, eating, singing. But when the branch is about to break because of a huge wind is coming along, the bird is not afraid, because although it allows itself to rest on the branch, it knows two things: that it can fly, it has its own power, and that there are other branches. So that we can learn to enjoy things without becoming enslaved to them. We can also learn to be more careful so as not to lose things. We can also analyze the inner meaning of any losses, why we may have chosen that experience, or how to retrieve it, or develop faith and divine wisdom, and learn to surrender to that wisdom, and of course confront and change any negative beliefs that may be actually causing us to lose things in our lives. But we welcome life's lessons which make me aware of the addictions that need to be programmed. Now, this is important because we don't need to let go of all of our attachments. We simply could not. We would suffer psychological problems. So what do? We deal with the attachments that are causing us pain at this time of our lives. So what is it that is causing me pain? Where am I suffering? Where am I feeling fear or hurt or anger? Let's look for the attachments in those areas. If I'm not feeling any suffering, then that's fine. The fourth pathway. Life is giving me exactly what I need at this moment. If I am unhappy, then I am being dominated by addictions and expectations. Now, remember that this is being said by a man who has no use of his hands or legs. So what he's saying here is that only if I am addicted to having the use of my arms and legs will I be unhappy. Life is always giving me exactly what I need to be happy. The only reason I am not happy is that I'm addicted to something else that I'm not being given. Now, this does not mean that we don't have the right to try to create what we want. Of course we do. We are also creators. And this is another seminar that we teach. So, yes, let us seek to create all of the things that we want. Of course, always in a moral way. But whatever the result is, let us accept that result. Continue to try to create, but not lose our happiness. The fifth pathway. Life is a mirror reflecting my beliefs, emotions, thoughts, words, and actions back to me. Now, this is a very important concept, and actually is the basis of the method called Ho'oponopono, in which I see everyone as a reflection of my inner content. That is, my beliefs, my emotions, my fear, my guilt, my reactions. That everything I see around me is a reflection of my internal world. And this I need to understand in order to see what my lesson might be. For example, if I was wearing these pink-colored glasses, everything would be pink for me. Dark pink, light pink, but nothing would escape being pink. Now, when I'm wearing glasses that say, I am not worthy, I'm going to see all kinds of situations that verify that. If I'm wearing glasses that say I'm the victim, I'm going to see only that. If I have wearing glasses that no one loves me, I'm going to see only that. So we see what our glasses change. Our glasses, we are wearing the glasses of our belief system. There's a very interesting story going around the internet about a woman who noticed that a new neighbor had just moved in the house next by, and noticed that whenever that woman would hang out her clothes, they would be dirty. And she would refer to her husband about that. So I really wonder what's happening here. Her clothes are always dirty. Until one day she looked out the window and found the clothes to be clean. And she mentioned that to her husband, and her husband said, no, I cleaned our windows. So it was this woman's windows that were making the other woman's clothes to appear dirty. Now, so we have lots of windows in our minds, which are causing us to perceive people in a certain way. So it is time to clean our own windows. And of course, to visualize our desired reality as already existing. This is one of the ways that we can manifest the reality that we want. Imagine your life, your family's life, society itself, all of the planet, as you would like it to be, as if it is already as you would like it to be. The sixth pathway. I accept myself exactly as I am, including my addictions and weaknesses, which I am transforming into preferences and strengths. Now, this is very important because when we start this work, we realize that others are not creating our reality, that we are creating our reality. And we had the comfort until now to blame others. And so now the logic is, well, if the others are not to blame, I am to blame. If the others are not at fault, then I am at fault. But this is not true. No one is at fault. These are all experiences which we have chosen, and we have made all kinds of soul contracts with the people around us to have these experiences for our growth process. So it's important to all of this process that we accept and love ourselves as we are, with our addictions and with our weaknesses, as we are. But also, remember the last part, which I am transforming into preferences and strengths. So this acceptance does not lead to apathy. It does not lead us to a state in which we stop growing. So we want to accept ourselves, but to continue growing. I consider it to be like a half-finished piece of art. Okay? A half-finished piece of art is exactly as it can be and needs to be in the process of becoming completed. It is definitely worthy as it is because it is in a state of process. It's becoming something. So what I need to do is accept myself, but also my loved ones and everyone around me as half-finished pieces of art, and which are in a process of completion, and everyone is acceptable and lovable as they are. But we, of course, want to continue drawing our own being and creating the being that we want to be. And this self-acceptance needs to be regardless of others' opinions, regardless of our appearance, of how we compare to others, and the results of our efforts. This is where we usually get lost. Our opinions of others, our appearance, how we compare, and the results of our efforts. The ninth, we're going ahead and then we're going to come back. Okay, the ninth simplified. I center myself before acting. I avoid acting when emotionally upset. Now, you may have your own ways of doing that. I'm listing some here. Exercises, breathing, relaxation, meditation, various forms of release, dance, song, walking, bringing to mind certain truths, any kind of self-knowledge process, and even writing what we're feeling. So each one of us needs to find his or her own way of centering, of getting out of negative emotions and coming into our inner center. Before we act, we avoid acting when emotionally upset. Now I have put this before the seventh pathway, which is I communicate openly and honestly with all people in order to dissolve my feelings of separateness. I put pathway 9 before because I feel that we need to first center ourselves and then communicate openly and honestly. Otherwise, if we're not in our center, our communication can easily go off track. Now, this kind of communication usually requires learning how to make an I message, in which we don't accuse the other, but simply explain what we are feeling and what we need. And also requires active listening, that is the ability to hear what the other needs and how they are feeling. This is a whole seminar in itself. Now, the eighth pathway. I offer loving, compassionate help to others by remembering that they are learning from their problems. So this is a balance here. I need to love others and help others, but also remember that their problems are actually their opportunities to learn. So we need to combine these. We need here the emphasis on remembering that they are learning from their problems. Now, you probably know this, but a caterpillar in its cocoon, as it's becoming a butterfly, if we see this caterpillar, which is now have become metamorphosized to a butterfly, coming out of the cocoon, and we help it get out, we cut it open very delicately so that it can get out, we're actually harming it because it won't be able to fly. Only by exercising its wings on the cocoon in order to get out can the fluid of this butterfly go into the wings so that the wings have enough power to hold it up. So when we help people solve their problems without enabling them to use their problems as learning processes, we may actually be doing them harm. I guess the place we need to look to this more often is with our children. So it's important to have love with spiritual discrimination. That is, to understand when helping somebody, if we're really helping them or actually doing the harm. So you want to have love, want to have compassion, but also want to respect that that soul needs this event in order to grow stronger. The 10th pathway. I am constantly calming my mind so as to clearly experience and merge with the world around me. This is actually directly from Patanjali, which is 2,500 years ago, who explains that yoga is the ceasing of the various fluctuations of the mind. And when these fluctuations of the mind cease, the spirit experiences its own self. We started the whole discussion today by experiencing that explain that we're not experiencing our spiritual being. Now, this can be done by calming the mind, and in that state of silence, then we do experience our true selves. And the 11th pathway is I am constantly aware of my motives and feel my energy, perceptiveness, love, and inner peace growing as my center is opening. So we're observing now the energy rising up from the lower centers into the higher centers, and we're aware of our motives becoming pure and pure. That is love and caring for other people. And the 12th pathway, everyone, including myself, is an awakening being evolving into higher planes of consciousness and love. It's very important to see everyone, to see our children, our parents, our neighbors, our co-workers, the people we don't like, everyone. Everyone is an expression of this one divining consciousness, and we're all in the process of evolving. So we come back to this image of rather than seeing people through our belief systems and our needs, that we clean that belief system and we see the others as they are, as divine beings temporarily acting and creating and evolving through a physical body. And this is what we want to remember when we're seeing the people around us. Now, Genkai closes his 12 pathways with what he calls the consciousness doubler. And I agree totally with him. He says, if you want your consciousness to be expanded, imagine you are the other and feel his or her needs, emotions, and beliefs. Our problem is that our consciousness is enslaved, imprisoned in our own ego, body, and mind. And we're not able to put ourselves in the other's position. So he says, if you really want to double your consciousness, especially when you're having a conflict with someone, or you're criticizing someone, or you're condemning someone, or you're fearful of someone, imagine you are the other and experience their reality. I think it's a very good suggestion. Now, the supplement of this would be learning how to manifest our goals. Now, I have written a book on this subject called 25 Ways of Creating Our Ideal Life. But this would be another subject. But you can go to our webpage and you will find information about creating what you want. So the 12 Pathways to Higher Consciousness by Ken Kais, described in his book, The Handbook to Higher Consciousness, which also included in my own book, The Psychology of Happiness. How can we use these 12 pathways? Read the book by Ken Kais and or The Psychology of Happiness. Memorize the pathways so that when you need them, you remember them. Understand that happiness can only be found by making internal adjustments. Make all the external adjustments you can, and here comes the serenity prayer. God, give me the power to change what I can, and the peace to accept what I cannot, and the discrimination to understand which is which. What can I change, and what can I not change? Study the centers of consciousness and become aware of which centers are functioning throughout the day. Become aware how the only cause of suffering is the addictions and transform them into preferences. This will be helped by keeping a diary, and actually I suggest in the third person so that you can be more objective. We also have many questionnaires on our site that you can use for self-understanding. Join a growth group in which are dedicated to the same process of self-betterment, of raising our level of consciousness, and keeping company with people less controlled by addictions, and cultivate practice, patience, and perseverance. Here again are the pathways. You can find them on our site. You can find them on the internet most likely, and in his book. And here is our site, the Center for Harmonious Living. Here you'll be able to find all the information. And if you would like to receive our email, our monthly newsletter, you can sign up for that. And if you need to send us a letter, An email, you can send it to this email address. May you be well and may you be happy. Love.